hundreds of thousands of people, and you don't see the pictures very often. A lot of the people here probably were there January 6th. It was the largest crowd I've ever spoken to.
We can't allow this just to be gone, you know, just to let it go. You can't allow it to just transfer power peacefully like Joe Biden wants.
All right. Don't tell me. I was at 9/11. I searched for bodies.
Trump did nothing wrong going into January 6th, and neither did anyone else. As a matter of fact, we should always question election integrity.
It's the new year, which means it's nearly the 3-year anniversary of the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol. While right-wing media has never been great about acknowledging the truth of the events that took place that day, they've regressed even further into revisionism in their effort to launder the image of Donald Trump. The reason for this is basically the same as it's always been. Trump is the de facto leader of the Republican Party. He's the current frontrunner for the Republican presidential nomination, and for this reason, Republicans have to insist that he definitely did not commit treason and participate in or instigate an insurrection, because naturally that would disqualify someone from presidential viability. This has been a PR stunt from the very beginning, from the moment Fox News refused to show actual footage of the event, from the time they referred to the insurrectionists as tourists, from the day they pinned the blame for the whole thing on Nancy Pelosi, the Democrats, and Antifa. And for the most part, it worked. Republican voters, specifically Trump supporters, either aren't bothered by the insurrection and the fact that it happened at all, or they actually believe the narrative that's been fed to them. Either way, they still plan to vote for Donald Trump this coming November. Despite the fact that countless insurrectionists have been legally embattled for the past 3 years, with many of them already having been convicted and sentenced, Trump, for all of his own legal battles, has come out remarkably unscathed. Half of our government still refuses to acknowledge the insurrection and Trump's role in it, because that would mean betraying the Republican Party. Trump is currently not in jail, and he's still going to be the presidential nominee. Politicians, pundits, and average Americans from both sides of the aisle fear MAGA retribution should the MAGA Supreme Leader be indicted, so they want to just brush this whole thing off. Nikki Haley, another presidential hopeful, has said as much. She thinks Americans are obsessed with Trump, and that even though he's committed, or at least partook in the greatest degree of political action against our very democracy, we would all just be better off if we let it go and moved on. Trump is not worth the trouble in Nikki Haley's opinion, either that or she's afraid of him and his base. Anyway, I referred to the image laundering as a PR stunt earlier, and we all know by now that public relations is really just a nicer word for propaganda. This is real. PR as we know it today was literally created by a propagandist who realized that he could use political propaganda techniques to sell people things they don't need or ideas that contradict their own values and reason. Americans, for some reason, think that propaganda is only a thing that other people in other countries have to deal with, even though our brand of it isn't even well packaged or concealed. It's full of loopholes and hypocrisies, and it relies on the cognitive dissonance of its target audience. That's why right-wingers can both voraciously back the blue while also not caring about the Capitol Police who were brutally attacked by insurrectionists 3 years ago. In a piece from Matt Gertz at Media Matters, he says, quote, "The right-wing effort to minimize January 6th and Trump's role in fomenting it began that very day. Fox hosts who knew better told their viewers that Trump supporters had been responding to reasonable fears that the election had been stolen, while any violence may have been caused by Antifa interlopers." He goes on to say, quote, "In the intervening years, Trumpist media stars, led by former Fox host Tucker Carlson, cosseted their viewers with a slew of lies about January 6th. There was no insurrection, just a political protest that got out of hand, in which the overwhelming majority of participants were orderly and meek. The violence was orchestrated by undercover federal agents as part of a sinister plot to imprison patriotic Americans for their conservative views." So it's all about framing. I'm a writer by trade and I read a lot. I think quite a bit about word choice and the implications of using one word over another. When reading political or journalistic pieces, sometimes it's obvious that people are trying to sway your opinion of things to either one side or the other by the words that they use. Sometimes they want it to be obvious that they aren't interested in concealing their own bias, but other times they want to trick you. Their diction can sometimes become so convoluted that they're either deliberately trying to confuse you with big words or technical terms, or they're just doing the absolute most in an attempt to ameliorate something that is truly terrible and unforgivable. And when they can't even do that, they just give it a mulligan and attempt to appeal to the inherent human desire to feel benevolent and gracious. After the January 6th insurrection, when Trump's pre-insurrection speech came under scrutiny, Senator Mike Lee of Utah, who found himself unable to defend the speech, opted to just give Trump a mulligan because, quote, everyone makes mistakes. Indeed they do, but that doesn't mean that there aren't and shouldn't be consequences for those so-called mistakes, especially when those so-called mistakes result in hundreds of injuries and deaths, the desecration and destruction of our nation's capital, and the obstruction of our democratic process. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out my podcast, Modern Context. Thanks.